Hello and welcome to Shock Talks Career Chats, a collaborative effort with the WSU Alumni Association and the Shocker Career Accelerator, where we talk to a panel of professionals about questions of the job, life, and everything in between. Today, we're talking with a panel of human resource professionals about advice and tips on Zoom etiquette, interview techniques, skills to develop, resume tweaks, and so much more. We cover everything from being a student getting ready to graduate, to looking for your first job, to even maybe that career change later on in life. We have tips for just about everybody today, and make sure you watch all the way through so you can take notes. But first, I've got to introduce our moderator, which is Brian Austin. He is the Director of Applied and Experimental Learning. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce our HR professionals.
Yeah, thanks, Tate. So Brian Austin, Wichita State University, Shocker Career Accelerator. I've been helping students connect with employers and employers connect with students for almost 7 years now here at Wichita State. Second, I'd like to thank our alumni panel for joining us today. So I will let our panelists, as Tate said, give you guys some advice and tips on how to get hired in the new year. And so if you all would like to introduce yourselves, just state your name, your workplace, position, and length of time working in HR. And if you're an alumni, please, share with us your graduation year and your major. So we'll start with Jena.
Jena Lysen. I actually Director of Human Resources at Martin Pringle. This is a new position for me. I've been here exactly a year. Prior to that, I spent about 17 years at Allen Gibson Hewlett. A good chunk of my job, no matter where I've worked, healthcare, aviation, it's been interviewing talent and bringing them on. So, and I'm not going to tell you what year I graduated because I'm not real sure I can remember that far back. But I did get my MBA in 1995, so I do know that one.
There you go. Wow, thank you, Jena. Lane?
Hi, Lane Lindt. I'm actually the manager of talent acquisition here at Wichita State University. Prior to that, I've been in the talent acquisition field for about 15 years, always on that side of HR. I always like to say that I really have a passion for kind of intersecting where people want to be and where they want to work. So
it's a great introduction. And Kent.
Hello. I guess you say I'm kind of the HR baby here. I'm a recent grad. I graduated back in 2019. I majored in human resource management. I am the current Human Resource Director at the Cancer Center of Kansas. Prior to that, I was an HR recruiter intern at Lindt. So recruitment has always been probably my biggest passion, but now I'm starting to dig into benefits, payroll, as well as employee relations. So definitely excited to work. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Kent, just to kind of ask, so now, since you graduated relatively recently, how many times have you sat on the other side of an interview table, interviewing new candidates?
Like being the interviewer?
Right.
So I would say I interned at Lindt for a year and a half. But even prior to that, I was a part of SHRM as well as my fraternity. I would interview potential members as well.
Right.
So it always relates to that as well. So I would say about approaching 2 years, 3 years.
Wow, it's fantastic. Well, very good. Thank you all for those introductions. And so we'll kind of go round robin with this, but if anyone has, any contributions and wants to jump in and go out of order, please be our guest here. So, but I'll kick this first one to Jena. So, Jena, in this new world, and take this question any way you want, what effect have virtual interviews had on hiring practices?
Well, I would say, first of all, it allowed the interviews to continue, especially when you're talking last March and April. We were able to continue interviews with college students that normally I don't think would have happened. So it allowed the process to go on. On the selfish side, I could book 3 or 4 interviews pretty quickly, didn't leave my office, could pull in people when I needed to. So there's an advantage to them. There's also a disadvantage. I'm sure every HR person has the new virtual story they would like to tell, but I did interview a young lady that her cat was walking all over the table behind her, and it was a little distracting. I realized I wasn't listening to the answers of her questions because I was waiting for this cat to tip over a vase. And she was extremely relaxed in her posture and her chair. I later brought her in for a live interview because I thought that went so poorly. So I think that's the disadvantage is sometimes to get a really good feel of a candidate, you may have to do it person to person.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you mentioned the fact that she was slouched, and I was curious and kind of continue that question and bounce it to Lane and Kent. What else have you noticed about virtual interviews and what effects they've had on hiring practices?
I love them. I think it's great. I think it's a great way to get a first impression on somebody. I also think it's a great way to whittle down your talent pool. So as you're going through and selecting, you may do video interviews with 3, 4, or 5 candidates, and then may bring that final candidate in to do that meet and greet. I've also found it very helpful to ask for work product and to be able to share that. So think of using a Zoom meeting and being able to say, in advance of our interview, can you please prepare a sample work product about this? And then being able to share it in more of that collaborative environment, almost like leading a presentation. So you get a better sense of a work product and what it may be like. Is it well formatted? What are the presentation skills like? So I've been trying to really use that, to my advantage wherever possible.
Right. The ability to share your screen, obviously. I mean, that's something you didn't have before. You could bring a portfolio or something like that, or, use a whiteboard. But yeah, interesting capacity that we're able to utilize that. So,
yep.
Kent, do you have anything to add to that?
I think very similar to what Jena said. Like it was really time efficient. We were able to knock out so many interviews so quickly because it was just so convenient to have. But I feel like sometimes it's not always the same. I feel like, even though we could see the candidates face to face, it's not the same as an in-person interview. Like she mentioned this last stories, we had one candidate who he had a baby running around and then the baby threw the ball in her face. So it definitely was a big distraction for the interview. But we kind of felt like she had a lot of potential, so we did bring her in for an in-person interview later on. And then it also you get like a phone screen potential as well. So if we saw a candidate and they were in their pajamas, we can kind of screen them out candidates right away. So it was kind of like a pre-check essentially, but it wasn't a huge obstacle. We have done virtual interviews for candidates outside of state before, so it wasn't too much of a transition, I would say. It was more of an obstacle when we'd interview with masks on in person. That was a big struggle.
Yeah, of course, if you're sitting, if it's just you doing the interview, no mask required, right? If it's someone, if your interviewers are in, using different panels like we're talking today, different computers, no need for masks. But if you're sitting in the same room with this, looking at the same computer, I could see how that could be a challenge. So I hope this is okay. I'm going to jump to another maybe more fun question down the line since Kent brought up some no-nos and so did Jena. So what do you see repeated when interviewing candidates that they should not be doing?
Can I jump in here, Brian? I have a couple of things that I've noticed, and this could be virtual or in person, but I see continued use of cell phones during interviews, whether it's checking them, going off, just being distracted by the notifications. Exactly. I saw that. That still happens. So that's always been one of my big pet peeves. I tell people leave them in the car, whatever you have to do, just make sure that you're really focused on the task at hand. And then the second thing that I always like to remind people is that please don't get your parents involved in the hiring process. So happens way more than you think when I will get a call from a parent saying, why did you not select my child? And I try and remind them very nicely that that would be between me and their child, who's an adult. So quick pointers, so when you go out there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, Jena, Kent, other things to add. Jena, I think you had unmuted.
I think I'm unmuted now. I would say the biggest problem I still have is people being totally unprepared for the interview. Whether it's a placement company that set them or they saw my ad on LinkedIn, I'm still amazed because I still ask the same question, what do you know about our company? And today I just interviewed someone right before this, and she honestly said, I don't have an idea. I know you're a law firm. It's just, how do you know you want to work there if you don't know anything about the company? So someone that's that unprepared that's just my pet peeve. It doesn't take much effort. The interview is scheduled for a week and we're on the internet.
Right. Kent, any other sort of no-nos or stories in addition to what you've already shared that you've seen?
Yeah, so I'm still really surprised to see professional etiquette dress-wise. That is still an issue we still have. People come in t-shirts and shorts, and I'm just appalled that, this is something that I thought would be kind of common sense a little bit, that you would know to dress for an interview, but that's still an issue we encounter. And also eye contact. I can see, I can understand that they're nervous, but that's a huge issue that we have. A lot of candidates who just talk like this and just look down at the table the whole time. And even when I was interviewing for a job, there was job in Kansas City, and the interviewers, the HR people, would not look at me. They would just stare down the whole time. And that really, I guess, kind of turned me off from the company itself as well. So kind of both sides. So I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves to give them, the full attention, and then hopefully vice versa, they can start improving their eye contact as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I understand. Hopefully this works, but yeah, you don't want people doing interviews like this. People want to see your smiling face, see your facial expressions. As Jena said, whether or not they're slouching, that all makes sense. So considering that there may be different audiences watching this, so from experienced professionals who may be, doing that interview, maybe it's their fourth or fifth or sixth really big interview in their career, versus, a student who may be interviewing for an internship. Have you seen a difference in the mistakes that, say, a more experienced professional might make? Or I hate to narrow it down to a specific factor like age groups, but are different age groups making different mistakes, or is it all across the board?
I would say it's probably all across the board. I've seen, tenured professionals go in with the assumption that they know everything and that, kind of with almost an air of entitlement. And then I can tell you that I've had some of the best interviews across the board with intern candidates. So I really think it just really depends on the person and the individual. I think that there are abilities for everyone to shine beautifully, whether it's an in-person or virtual interview. And I think there's also opportunities for them to maybe turn off the interviewer, both aspects.
Thanks for that response, Lane. So this is a very general question. It's one you've probably gotten many times before, but what career competencies or power skills do you look for in a new hire more than any other? So generally, we're talking non-technical skills. So
I will say that especially with young people right out of college, I'm looking for their ability to ask questions. Which will help their orientation process, just getting in. And I just actually have fought that recently with someone who they just didn't think about asking questions because they still think, well, if I'm not doing it right, my boss will tell me. And it just doesn't always work that way, unfortunately, with different generations in the environment. So I'm looking for someone that is assertive enough to ask the questions.
I want somebody who has that agility to learn on the fly, as well as, really perhaps just being able to work together in a team. So kind of piggybacking off what Jena said, that ability to ask questions, but also be able to assimilate in a very quick, time frame is always helpful. I do believe communication is very important. So whether it's verbal, written, on the telephone, so many times we have to communicate across multiple channels, and just being able to communicate clearly, concisely, and timely.
Across different platforms, right? In person, via email, via phone, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Kent, anything to add?
Yeah, I think over here at the Cancer Center, since we're at the Cancer Center, we deal with a lot of cancer patients. It's a very hard topic. I think one thing we always look for is compassion, passion, and outgoingness. I feel like, we want to find almost everyone here that works here has that drive to make that connection with the patient, to be there in the beginning of their diagnosis, to be there at the end. And we want to see that in the interview. We want to see that in action when they get hired. We want to see the love and affection that they're doing this because they love it, not for a paycheck. I feel like that is a huge thing that we always look for, is kind of like, their excitement when we talk about the Cancer Center. Why are they interested in working for the Cancer Center? What's behind it? What really drives and motivates you to get out of bed and go to work every day? So that's stuff that we kind of look for when we hire our nurses.
Right. And to tie back to one of Jena's responses, so, one of the ways I imagine that they can demonstrate that passion is by doing some research on the company or the Kansas Cancer Center before they come in for the interview. So, yeah, that's fantastic. What are some common misconceptions people have when they are preparing for an interview? So is there anything that we can do or communicate today that could kind of help them out?
I think one misconception that I've seen and I've learned, that I've witnessed, is that sometimes we put so much emphasis on the professionalism, like being so professional, being perfect, and being so serious in the interview. I feel like, yes, that is true. Just be professional, dress-wise and etiquette. But then I feel like when I see a candidate who's up like this the whole time, talking like this, like a robot, and it's scripted, we can see through that. And it's sad to see candidates get rejected because their personality doesn't get the shine, because they're so worried about how they, present themselves as a professional person. And I feel like sometimes you need to find the fine balance between professionalism and then also just being yourself. Sometimes we just, at the end of the day, it's work, but then we're people. We're hiring people, not robots. And we want to have fun with them. We want to have some fun with someone who can crack a joke once in a while. So but that's one thing I noticed.
Yeah. Does anyone want to bounce off of Kent's comments there? I think that's important. How can candidates show their humanity, right? How can they show their character? Because of course I can imagine that's important. You want to make sure that they fit in, culturally to the team, right? So.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Brian. So kind of piggybacking off of what Kent said, we are hiring people, right? And that's so vitally important. And it's actually a two-way street, meaning that the person has to be a good fit for the company and the company has to be a good fit for the person. So it's really vitally important that that's a good match. We spend so much time with the people that we work with, that part of it has to be, do I like this person, right? Is this person qualified for the position? Can they do it? And how are they going to fit in with the team? And so being able to show just a little bit of who you are, I think that's going to be important on both sides, because it does have to be a match between the employer and the person. I also want to let people know that it's okay, that they don't have to immediately start talking right after they hear a question. Sometimes it's okay to pause and reflect and think and then go into it. I think it's okay to not have the answer immediately, but to take that time and then answer a question appropriately. To me, it's a misconception that you have to just answer and fire when ready and be that prepared. I'd much rather people have a nice, concise response and then respond to a question.
That's great. Yeah, sometimes, I'll start a sentence without ever knowing where it's going. I think that's what Michael Scott says in The Office. So,
yes.
So Jenna, you look like you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I was going to say mine's less about the actual in-person interview, but with college students, it's something where we take them out to events. Maybe it's a dinner, maybe it's a larger group. And I think the misconception that we run into a lot is they forget that they're not in an interview situation. If they are out with an employer anywhere, any place, they're being judged in that situation. A lot of it is culture fit. But I've seen huge faux pas that have happened at a lunch table or just running into them, maybe even on campus at a campus event. It's just you're running into that employer. You need to think this is an opportunity. The interview is just different.
Right. How often does that happen? I recall in my career, I think the only time that I was taken out to lunch as part of the interview or breakfast was, I think that's only happened to me one time, but it's standard practice with some employers. Isn't that the case?
I think it's almost standard practice with some of the student organizations. That's where a lot of that has happened. The student organizations have invited us in, and then we have events at the employer where we invite those organizations in. And I just, they need to remember, and it may be casual, and maybe casual clothes are okay, but casual behavior is not.
The question I was interested in, I think it's really relevant because I don't think a lot of people, unless you're in the middle of a job search, understand how intensive this process can be. But can you explain what your organization's typical application process is? One of the things that I find myself, or that I have discovered, is that with some organizations, it's as simple as looking at the job description and submitting, adjusting your resume to fit and submitting that resume to whoever it says you should submit it. With other organizations, I find that it takes, at least 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get through their applicant tracking system. So if you want to just speak to that a little bit, strategies when applying for jobs, how long your application processes typically take for a single opportunity, that kind of thing.
Well, I can speak. I've worked for small organizations for the last 20 years of my career, so it happens fast because I am the tracking system. They usually a contact with me and things can fly pretty quickly. The application process is me giving it to you so you can fill out the application. So I don't have a great deal of systems like I did when I came out of aviation, and I may not get a resume for about a week.
Right. Kent, Lane, anything you want to add?
So I would say that first off, I encourage everyone to apply for jobs that they are qualified for, but at the same time to really understand the need for qualifications and preferred qualifications, meaning that if something requires an engineering degree, you really need to have an engineering degree to be qualified for it. If a preferred qualification is the ability to speak Spanish, well, that's a preferred qualification. So I just encourage all applicants to really look through what are the minimum qualifications that somebody needs to have to apply, and then what are the preferred qualifications when you're making that decision on whether or not to apply for a position. There are a lot of positions that I may think I can do, but I can tell you, I am not qualified to be a lawyer in any way, shape, or form, as I do not have a JD or a law degree. But I think I could do that position pretty well, but that doesn't actually make me qualified, and I probably will not move forward in that position. So, that's one thing that I always like to remind people. And second is I encourage people to allow themselves enough time for whatever that formal application process is. So to kind of tie into what Jenna said, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, you can email a resume. So that's how quick and efficient some companies are doing things. You can apply through their applicant tracking system, where they may even have assessments tied to it. So you're actually going in, not only just uploading your resume, filling out an application, then they may move you over to an assessment process. And that whole process can take 45 minutes. So I would encourage you to make sure that you have the time to do that. And part of that is actually a process to see how many people are actually interested in the actual position. It's a weed out. So if you're not fully committed to that, then they wouldn't want to move you forward either. And then others are just upload and move on. So there are varying different levels of that, and everyone's process is really different. So I just encourage everyone to be responsive to phone and email. I think that's very important. Check your voicemail, right? Recruiters leave voicemails, they email. Sometimes now they text. And then make sure that if you're asked to do something, do it in a quick and timely manner, no matter what the process is. Remember, the process is actually the company's, and it's not yours as an applicant. So as an applicant, whether you're an entry level or a professional, is really, can you follow instructions in a quick and timely manner? Because that can always expedite the process as well. And it kind of gives you brownie points as you're moving through.
It's a great response. Jena, Kent, I'm curious, how many times have you called a candidate to schedule an interview or something and then found that, I'm sorry, the person you've called has their mailbox that is full? Please hang up and try again. Does that happen?
Yes, a lot. And since I'm a part of a small company right now, so back when I was in Bombardier, we used an applicant tracking system. So that process was pretty clear cut. Like, if you didn't have the requirements, I'm sorry, for a specific job, if you didn't have it clear cut already, I sent all the requirements that meet the qualifications to the director. For small companies, we just use our website as well as Indeed, and then word of mouth. You can call in, send an application, or they can contact me via email. So definitely a different process. And since Indeed doesn't list their email sometimes, when I get the voicemail where I can't leave a voicemail, then how in the world do I get in contact with them? And then they potentially lose out, and I just got to keep calling until the point where if we already hire somebody, I'm sorry, it's too late. And I guess tip-wise, I always get questions from like my friends, my peers. Is there any point in doing a cover letter or getting a reference letter at all? And they're like, is it just a waste of time? I feel like people don't read it, and I feel like it could only hurt you, it only help you, not hurt you. Because sometimes when we have two top candidates and they're both qualified, and only that's left is we can compare cover sheets, that could be the last deciding factor or reference.
Wow. Jena, it looked like you were going to add something.
I will say I won't leave a message if their name is not on their voicemail. So when I used to be at Wichita State, talking to all of your students about it and a kind of a marketing plan is, so that's how you have to look at it. You're marketing yourself, and check your phone, make sure it's not too full, number one, but that message should have your name, because I don't know where I'm leaving that message, and I'm not going to say I'm going to set it for an interview. The other thing is I do not respond to another employer's email. I just had that recently with someone. I said, can I have your email? She gave me her current employer, and I said, I don't send information to a current employer. And she goes, well, I don't have a personal email. Now, granted, she must be one of the few in the whole world that doesn't have a personal email, but you need to have a personal email that doesn't have a stupid name. I would prefer it be your name. And we used to collect stupid email names at my previous job. So Pookie Bear is probably not going to be it, or something with sexual content. You got to remember you're marketing yourself, and it's just going to be best if it's your name.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I kind of want to jump on Jena's point as well. The voicemail, even what you leave as a voicemail is important. I had a couple of voicemails like, what's up? See you later. I hate you. I'm not here. And hang up. And that just totally turned us off because we really thought he or she had potential off the resume.
Specifically, Kent, just to clarify, you're talking about the voicemail greeting. So when you call, the greeting that they get, as Jena said, sometimes if you don't set up your voicemail, it's going to say, you've reached number 78531, whatever it is. Whereas really, Jena, what you want to get is, and Kent, what you're talking about is you want to get, hello, you've reached Brian Austin. Thanks for calling. Please leave a message. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Correct?
Right.
Right. That makes sense. And Jena, I think you brought up branding. I love the professional email. Just FYI, I think Mine was Tomahawk _007 at hotmail.com, in 2004. So, too funny. But let's kind of shift. So you mentioned your personal brand that you are building, and you're doing that with your voicemail, with little things, even like your email address that you choose, your personal one. What other ways, either in this social media filled world, can individuals build their professional brand? And I'll ask specifically, how important is LinkedIn?
Very important. It's one of the things by law I can go look at, and I do. I will say the last couple of generations have really filled those out well and have taken a professional look. It just looks bad if you don't have one, or have no information on it. It's like, I have you. So your picture is important. Take that serious. It's an electronic resume. Spend the time to fill it out correctly. Keep it updated. I'm a LinkedIn recruiter, so I'm out there searching for lots of people.
I want to piggyback on that. Absolutely, I think LinkedIn is important. I love the references. So if you can get peers or colleagues to write those, I love those. It kind of gives you another sense and layer of who the person is. But also using a LinkedIn recruiter seat, I encourage people to put the buzzwords in there of what I'm looking for specifically against a position, because I may be looking for, somebody who has experience with thermoplastics. Well, I might be looking for thermoplastics, and I need that to be on their LinkedIn seat, or I'm going to miss them completely. So it's a fine line for being too specific, because it is just kind of a quick snapshot and run through. I don't need somebody's resume put back into their LinkedIn profile, because I actually have their resume normally in front of me. But I need to know if I'm going out and I'm direct sourcing and trying to fish for someone, I want to know enough about them that I can get a specific search.
And I 100% agree. LinkedIn, like when I came into college, that was a huge part of SHRM, and that's what they taught me about. And I started using right away. I think something that I realized that some people don't really take advantage of is they think I can just make a LinkedIn and I'm good, put a resume and I'm good, and never use it. I feel like, connect with people, learn about them, send a connection out. But then also, if you have an accomplishment, no matter how big or how small it is, post about it. There's some posts that can get 30,000 views. LinkedIn, it shares quickly. So we can see, how you're giving back to the community, or how you're involved with the community. And as well as other social media such as Facebook, there are some recruiters like myself. We do check your social media, and if you have some inappropriate stuff on there, that could hurt you as well. So clean up your Facebook, especially if you're getting to the age now where you're trying to look for a job and you gotta be professional. I had to tell all my friends, hey, I love all your memes and everything, but you can't be posting that on my wall no more. I have a lot of professional people as friends on Facebook now, so please respect that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So thank you so much for those responses. I think oftentimes, I remember when all the conversations around social media were cautionary, right? So make sure you don't have any bad pictures on your Facebook or Instagram accounts or whatever. Make sure. But now the conversation I've seen over the years is really kind of shifted to, tell the story through social media that you want people to know, right? Tell the story on LinkedIn that you want potential employers to see. And so, your answers confirm that. By the way, I can't remember who brought it up, but someone mentioned professional photos. Take that seriously on your LinkedIn profile. If you're a WSU alum or a current student and need a headshot, a professional headshot, we can do that at the Shocker Career Accelerator here at Wichita State. So just go to wichita.edu/careers, and it should be an appointment you can make. You can also call 316-978-3688 and schedule it that way as well. So what steps did you take while in college to prepare for your interviews?
So I loved mock interviews. I remember getting with my friends and, first big interview, I'm going to graduate in a couple of months and run me through questions. Now, to me, it wasn't as important, like, are they the right questions? But they really got me thinking about the experience and what it really takes, to do that. Love mock interviews. I do them with friends and family members. If they're interested, they all come to me and like, I have a job interview, Lane, help. And I'm like, let's write some questions. Let's go through it. The one piece of advice I want to tell people is when they're answering questions to be as specific as possible. Right? So behavioral-based interviews are really what most companies use, meaning that the past experience is the best predictor of future action. So if you're able to give an example specific of when an action happened, what you did, and what was the end result, then you're more likely to be able to reproduce that in the future. So be specific, give the details, and then give the end result.
Yeah, I would say that especially with college students, almost all of their experiences can be turned into transferable skills. So, that person that worked at Dairy Queen got customer service. Not all customers are good, or friendly. If they were an athlete, they got team experience. So I think that almost everything counts, and they need to consider that. Employers that are interviewing college students know that they don't have a job history. And to think outside the box of conflicts that they've resolved, team opportunities they've had, what it was like to take direction. There isn't an athlete in the world that didn't have to take direction from their coach and get critical feedback, like it's time for you to go sit on the bench. So I say, think outside the box. And they've had a lot of life experiences that I look forward to. And I used to always say, the McDonald's and Dairy Queen are some of my best because sometimes they've had some of the most difficult customer service experiences.
So I think there's a name to what you all are referring to, and what that is behavioral-based interview questions. So do you all ask, just kind of nod, do you all ask behavioral-based interview questions? So, excuse me. So what I would encourage anyone listening to do, if that term does not sound familiar to you, just Google behavioral-based interview questions, and it will outline exactly what those are. So it's just like Lane and Jena said, tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with a coworker about a task that was given to you. How did you handle that, and what was the outcome? That might be an example of a behavioral-based interview question. And what it's looking for is exactly like the panelist said, a specific answer. So about a time, they want you to actually go back and talk about that time and what the outcome was. So Google that, look that up, and I just say mock interviews. Lane, to your point, if students, alumni want to schedule a mock interview appointment, they can do as many of these as they want. Same thing, you can go to wichita.edu/careers, get that scheduled. You can also call our office number 316-978-3688 and schedule those mock interviews. So here's another one. So looking at different companies, and this goes off to what you said, Lane, about interviewing the companies. How did you decide to work for your current organization? And what advice would you give a student accepting a job offer?
So having made a very recent job change and jump, I wanted to work for a great place. That was really, really important to me. So doing my research, like Jena said earlier, researching the company. But I went out and talked to a bunch of people and wanted to really know, is this a great place to work? So that's what was really important to me at where I am in my career is, am I working for a great company and is my work valued? So I encourage people to really think about what's important to them when they're making that decision. Do your research, talk to people, network. LinkedIn, you can figure out if you have any contacts or mutual connections that may work there or may have know somebody. But it really is where we spend most of our time, and it's a very important decision. right? I also tell people kind of do that gut check. Is this the right place for me? There's a little bit of that, if it doesn't feel right, it may not be. But encourage people to really go through that process of, is this somewhere where I want to spend more time than that I spend with my family and or friends?
Very good. So I want to ask one more question, and then we'll wrap up with just final comments. So for our current students, how important are internships? I know there may be a lot of students out there who have, and I remember being in this situation, who have a good paying part-time job, but it is completely unrelated to their degree and their long-term career outcomes. So, tell us about how you value as an employer internships and other applied learning experience.
Well, I will say my last 2 jobs, interns have been very important, and you're about 99% assured that we're probably going to keep you, primarily because interns run through the same interview process as a direct hire would. They're exposed, they decide if they like that job. We've probably had maybe more fallout of someone waking up and saying, I got a degree in what? This isn't what I want to do, than the other way around, because I haven't had to let interns go very often. There are very few interns in my past that I had to sit down and say, this isn't a good fit. Because we put a lot of energy in getting those interns to begin with. In fact, probably more energy than what we do in a direct hire. It's absolutely crucial, I think, to take internships and have that experience more than anything to make sure you chose the right field.
Yeah, so I want to kind of add on to what Jena said. Love interns. I think it's very valued. I think it's one of those things where it is kind of that mutually beneficial. You're trying out a company, they're trying out you. I do believe that it really helps. And if you do have a successful internship, you are almost guaranteed that direct hire position. But I never want to discount the other parts, because there are some majors that maybe not have as many internship opportunities. So I don't want to discount students or professionals who may not have internship opportunities, but did work or were leaders within an organization, active on campus. Because to me, for entry-level positions, I really, and this is really the only time your GPA really matters, is getting one of those first jobs right out of college, is, I would rather take somebody who has a 3.2 and is involved, active in internship, a job, a leadership opportunity, than somebody who's a 4.0 but wasn't engaged or didn't do anything at all. I'm not trying to undercut the importance of good grades. I'm trying to hire a person who is well-rounded and who will be able to come in and fit in with my team.
Yes, I would also say 100% agree. I think it's all about building that foundation when you're an undergrad. Joining organizations that relate to your major. If you lack work experience like I did, I had to make up for it by joining so many organizations that related to my major. And internships are such a huge thing. Just that related experience, even if you're taking a huge pay cut, I say for the long-term goal, it might be worth it to get this experience in the bag and really build almost like your portfolio of yourself, to sell yourself to the company. And I can't express how many times where my friends right now who were in my HR classes, they didn't care about internships. They just focused on the grade. They didn't care about involvement. And they graduated with a great grade, a bachelor's in human resources, and they cannot find a job because they have no experience at all. And that is something I really stress to all my undergrad friends. Get involved and get stuff related to your major.
Wow. Yeah, it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than halfway up when you don't. So yeah, an interesting point just about internships at Wichita State for current students or potential future students. Many of our interns, it's not, we have summer internships, but most of our students are working year round because we're located right here in the largest city in the state of Kansas. Students oftentimes will work in internships 20 hours a week during the school year, and then dial that up to 40 hours per week during the summer and holiday break. So let's I just want to wrap up here, and any final comments, anything related to your, that you can bring with your experience and careers that you'd like to leave, current students, alumni, potential students down the road, anything you want to leave them with?
I would say the big thing is to get involved in your professional organizations. I mean, Kent talked about the student SHRM program on campus, their organization. I'm going to tap into organizations. I may even know the faculty advisor of some of those. So it's a great way to find students. And I think those students that have, which Lane kind of mentioned, that don't maybe necessarily have the traditional opportunities for internships. A lot of times I've hired them for runners or admin support or receptionists because I don't need them full time. And I definitely put a runner through 4 years of college. He's now HR at Spirit. So he got to see a professional environment. Once we knew his profession, I helped mentor him and gave him some opportunities in HR. But I would say there are other opportunities. I always call Brian when I'm looking for someone. Maybe calling him soon about someone. So there's opportunities out there. So I don't want people to be discouraged because maybe they're not in accounting or they're not in HR, they're not in engineering. There are other opportunities that those of us that have been in Wichita and Wichita State alums, we want to hire the Wichita State kids.
Right on.
Yeah. Just to wrap up, I have small children. So I have a 4-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. And what I tell them as we start having some of these conversations about what do you want to be when you grow up? And as a mom with small children, I want my kids to be happy. And so, as you start having some of those conversations, I always go back to, kids, I want you to do something that you love, right? That you're passionate about and that every day that you get excited about, because life really is too short to do something where you go up every day and it's a grind and it's exhausting. So if there's a way that you can find something that you truly are passionate about and figure out a way to get paid for it and do it really, really well, I would love to encourage people to do that.
I guess I kind of just wanted to end it off with remember how important networking is in making connections. Sometimes the famous quote is not what you know, it's who you know. I feel like a lot of HR professionals can relate to that. It really hits home because that's who we are. We like to meet new people, we make connections, and really join organizations. Even like what I did was every time I went to a SHRM meeting, I met all the HR professionals. I made sure I wanted to stand out personally, introduce myself, what I have, what I can do, and then kind of see what their business is about and what they can kind of give in regards to life tips. Same thing with even your HR professors. You never know who you meet because later down the road, they might help you get a job, because that's how I personally landed a director role for someone who just got out of college, only 2 years, because of a connection. So that's something I want to say.
That's a fantastic point, Kent. And so what would you do after you met those HR professionals? Would you connect with them on LinkedIn?
Yes, and take their business card. Usually almost every HR professional has a business card.
Yeah, it's a great point. Students, a lot of students don't realize you're building network. It's a scary word, but to your point, you're building your network right now and you don't even know it. The people that you're interacting with in class, I was amazed at how many of my former classmates I now have a professional working relationship with. And so, fair point. Be a good teammate, be a good classmate, because you are building your professional network, whether you realize it or not. Well, thanks again, everyone. This was a really engaging conversation. I really appreciate your time and sharing with us today. So we'll wrap up this session of Shock Talks. Jena, Lane, Kent, thanks for your insight. Back to Tate.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys all again for helping us out with this conversation today. I hope that people watched all the way through and they really took notes, because you guys covered things from being new students to your first job to even, maybe that second career change or something like that. And I think there's advice for someone at any stage in their life and any part of their profession to really take something away with. And, a lot of good tips about the virtual interviewing and things that you probably should and shouldn't do. And I probably do things that I'm not supposed to do. You probably shouldn't have your hands in the screen, but I think that it's been a great conversation. I've had a pleasure of kind of sitting backstage there and listening to you guys, and I hope everyone else that has watched along got some really great notes. And I just want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy days and out of your careers to help us out today and be a part of that. So I want to thank all of our guests. And Brian, I want to thank you for moderating and taking charge here on our career chat. And we look forward to doing a lot more of these in the future with various alumni and professionals. And make sure to check us out here at shockeralumni.org. Career chats for a list of those virtual talks, or wichita.edu/careers, right, Brian? That's where they're going to be located. So you can catch all that information, watch this over as many times as you need to, check out the new ones as they come out, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the future. So thanks again, guys. And as always, go Shockers, right? So
Go Shockers.